Hey, what's up guys? Today we are here to do a SMITE tier list on patch 4.16. This tier list will be in the description below, so if you want to check it out, please click on the link. We will be going through every god in depth, why they are not in a certain tier, and why I believe they should be in said tier. So let's start with Agni. He is the pinnacle of balance, as everyone likes to say. Decent all-rounder. He's got decent burst, decent CC, decent mobility. He's a little bit squishy, though, because he is, in fact, a mage. But he is the pinnacle of balance and what most people balance their tier lists around. Amazenkub, the B god in the B tier, because of the lack of mobility. Not only the lack of mobility, though, because his hives can be considered to provide him some mobility, but also the lack of hard crowd control and a CC immunity in any of his abilities. You will see this often in the B tier, a lack of mobility. That's a thing. That's a pretty wide-known trend in the B tier. So we can go to the next god, Apwash, who also has the same issue: high damage, high burst, but no mobility, no CC immune ult. So he just kind of is stuck in the B tier along with Amazenkub until they do something to help their survivability. Even in ranked, they kind of suffer a lot. Amaterasu, on the other hand, is a pretty good warrior. She's more of a utility-based warrior than an aggression warrior because her early game is not the best. Not the best early game. However, late game that she provides with the stun on her ultimate, provided along with the buffs that her 1 provides, as well as her passive, as well as the CC and damage reduction her 2 and 3 provide. It's pretty useful. She is pretty good in solo lane. She's not the best because of the fact that her early game is bad, but you can still play her and do well with her, specifically because of those auras. Those auras really push her over the edge. On her, he's a decent hunter that can work with the Devo's crit build. However, it's not optimal for him, so there's that. He's pretty decent. His ult late game is more of a beads or CC immunity late game than damage, but it's still a pretty good beads for like 2 seconds every 75 seconds, so it's pretty useful. He's relatively safe if you can land his pillar impales. He's really good early game. He sort of falls off late game, so he's not going to be any higher on this list, especially since games are going on longer. Next god is Anubis. Same with these other two, lack of mobility, and his 2 of his damaging abilities root him in place, which is pretty bad for a god with no mobility to begin with. The next god is Ao Kuang. He is probably one of the most overperforming gods, along with a couple others that I'll mention later. He has a lot of burst. He has an execute. He's got a good amount of mobility, and itemization currently works really well in his favor. The rings work well with him. He can build really bursty. He can all-in someone with little to no risk because of his ultimate and the way that it works. Unlike Thanatos, who has to go in with his ultimate, he can leave the scene with his ultimate. That's why Ao Kuang's is better. The only issue is you can't beat it. Next god is Afro. Afro is pretty decent. She's got heals, although they're only for 2 targets, 1 being herself. She's got the kiss, decent, although herself and 1 ally. She's really good at duoing, is what I'm trying to say. But she's not that good in duo lane. You feel me? She's good at being in a pair of 2. That's when she shines, but other than that, she's kind of meh. But she can do damage. She has decent CC, decent utility. Her early game is pretty bad. Her late game, though, is pretty strong, like Hell. Except Hell does what she does a little bit better, which is why she will be higher in the tier list later on. But Afro still has her place in the meta, although not that big of a place. Apollo! He is pretty good because of the Devos and crit buffs. He scales really nicely off those. His passive gives him free attack speed, doubles his attack speed for free, basically. His mez is really strong. His clear is pretty decent, I guess. His dash and his ult make him super safe to play in lane. If you're getting ganked, you can just ult away. His ult also is a global presence, so it allows him to go from one lane to another really easily compared to other ADCs. So that just makes him really strong. Arachne will join Afro in A- because she is decent in ranked because she can snowball. However, sprint does counter her pretty hardly. if you guys do not know, her spider web really is what she really relies on to stick to foes, and once she starts sticking to foes, she can stun them after 3 basics. However, if Sprint's activated, she can't get closer to them, although her spider web gives her a speed boost. And Sprint makes them slow immune completely, so it's really hard for her to keep up. Next god is Ares. Ares is a really good god now that Stone of Gaia is removed. He's not the best, but he's really good now because Stone of Gaia is removed and his ult is now not completely worthless after that. He is really good at burning beads. He's also really good at setting up other ults with if the beads are already burned. He's really hyper aggressive. His biggest flaw is the fact that he has no lane clear. His lane clear is pretty abysmal for a Guardian especially. He also has no mobility, so that hurts him a bit. However, he is a Guardian, so he can't be dinged too hard with that. The next god is Artemis. Artemis is AMC but better because of the way that her ult works. Her ult gives her CC to all enemies nearby, as well as CC immunity, which allows her to escape many situations. Not only that, but her 2 provides her movement speed, like AMC's Hives. She's got more CC, more self-peel for herself, which is why she's better than AMC, which is also why she's probably more likely to be seen in play. Not only that, but she scales pretty nicely off crit devos, so don't be surprised to see Artemis every once in a while. Just not every game. Ardeo, this shouldn't come as a shock to anyone, but she's overperforming right now. Those nerfs were relatively small, didn't hit her where she needed to be hit. Her damage is still really high, her tankiness is still really high, her healing is still really high, her CC is still really high, her cooldowns are still really low. The only thing that is bad about her is her mana cost, because she's a stance switcher, but other than that, she's got a lot. Her kit is so bloated right now, especially her second ability. The fact that it reduces power and gives her protections depending on which stance is pretty wild. Not only that, but her passive gives percent protection reduction, so there's that as well. Next god we have on the list is Athena. Her ultimate is one of the things that people talk about. Her ultimate and her taunt are the things that make her good. Her ultimate gives global presence, and the 2-second taunt sets up a lot. Nothing more to be said, but there is. The dash gives block stacks. I think people forget how useful those block stacks are, especially in a crit meta. You're blocking probably 2 crits with those block stacks, because you're going to have an average of 2 block stacks, right? With those 2 block stacks blocking crits, you're blocking healing from lifesteal, you're blocking crits entirely, and since they have usually less attack speed, even with Wind Demon, since they're not critting, they take longer to remove those block stacks, really reducing DPS that they deal, which is super good. That makes Athena really good right now. In my opinion, one of the better Guardians of this current patch. Awila, she's pretty good, especially since, like with Ares, what's it called? Stone of Gaia is bad. Because of Stone of Gaia being bad, she's pretty good. The only issue with Awila is that you kind of either have to counter build her against a team with a lot of leaps, or you have to have a decent amount of knockups on your team. But once that happens, because there are comms now, so it's more likely now, she will most likely snowball because of the way her kit works and the way her 2 damages things. Bacchus! He's pretty good right now. Same reason as Awilish and Ares. Stone of Gaia no longer exists. His main form of CC is Flop. Now, doesn't get countered as hard, so he's pretty good on that front. And he also has a good damage. Clear. He's kind of like Ares, really aggressive, little clear. But he does, unlike Ares, have an escape. But unlike Ares, he also doesn't have a really good ultimate. So, there's trade-offs between these 2 gods. Bakasur. We'll put him in A- tier. He is an ult bot, like everyone knows, but he is a pretty decent ult bot. He's not the best ult bot, but he's a decent ult bot. True damage is always nice, however, he doesn't have any hard CC to confirm the true damage all the time, but, you know, he's Baka. He can carry some pub matches, but, you know, nothing too crazy. Bastet. She is decent, not the best assassin. She's early game, falls off late game. Cats get one-shotted by most abilities nowadays. Late game. Early game, they're really thick, though, so that's when you use her cats. Objective push is not as good because cats no longer reduce backdoor protections. Another thing is towers have more health now, so it's harder to push them. She's more of a poke assassin late game where you leap in, unload your abilities, and try to leap out again. So she just has a role shift. She's probably not going to be seen too much, but she will be seen a little bit, I think. Bellona should come to no surprise. She's one of the best warriors in the game right now. S tier. She got block stacks on a one like Athena. She's got a disarm, so Athena but better. When it comes to reducing ADC damage, she's got bludgeon, so good clear, although it can be interrupted, which is her one counter. And she's got an ultimate that's really strong, like really strong. So we'll see if they nerf her. Hi-Rez will, hopefully, but for now, she's still really strong. Cabrakan, he is decent. He fell out of the meta a while back due to the Vanguard nurse and the Tremor nurse and such. But he's still good if you can play him right. He's got the tankiness, he's got the CC. Not the best in either jungle or solo. You're probably not going to be playing him in support, so he's there. He's meh. He can be better. Don't need to buff him, though, because he's pretty balanced right now. Camazotz, in my opinion, he's S- because he can snowball really hard, especially in ranked, because it's harder to stop a snowballing god in ranked than in SPL. He's one of the hardest snowballers in the game. He's got 3 heals, 2 of them being on his second ability and third ability. He can easily dive towers with his ultimate because he's immune to... He can't be targeted by towers during his ultimate, and it does a decent amount of damage if you land all 3 hits. His 2 has an absurd amount of base damage, like 520 or something like that, plus 130% scaling if I remember correctly. His 1 gives power and vision on the opponent for 15 seconds. Not the power, I think that's like 3 seconds, but the vision's for 15 seconds. His 3 just heals, although it's a pretty poor leap, which is why he's not any higher. His leap is relatively weak. Kurnanos, he is pretty good right now, because it's Kurnanos. He has definitely fallen off a bit since his release. There have been plenty of nerfs to deal with him. His summer heat is still strong. He doesn't like, but he doesn't dislike the crit lifesteal build. It's just kind of a different build for him. It's not as good as the attack speed build, but he doesn't dislike it. He's probably going to stay in S- for a good time, unless they hard nerf him. We'll see what happens to him. Next up is Chalk. He's Chalk. He can win lane. He doesn't do much from there. He just wins lane. From there, he kind of he's basically a bullet sponge at that point. Heals up damage, gets protections from his 2, slows enemies nearby. Maybe ults to disrupt a bit, but other than that, he doesn't do much. But he does win lane, so that's why he's anywhere above A-. Chang'e! She's, in my opinion, slightly better than Afro because her CC is really strong. Her ultimate's really strong. Her immunity, although it's only for herself, is a lot shorter cooldown than Afro's. Her heals team-wide, so, you know, there's that. It also reduces healing by 50%, if I'm correct, so it counters other healers. Not only that, it does damage. Not too much, but her 1 can be spammed and does a lot of damage. And that's pretty important because being able to do that much damage allows her to play other roles such as jungle and mid and solo. However, she's not optimal in any of those roles right now, which is kind of sad because Chang'e's pretty not that fun to fight against, but she's pretty cool. She's pretty cool. Next god is Chiron. He's pretty good right now. He's safe. The reason he was good back in Season 2 is because he was safe. He's still safe. The buff to his 1, applying the mark, was super helpful. It allows him to bully a lot harder. But he's also safe, so with his dash especially. His ult is a safe. He's just all around safe god. Next up is Kronos. If I could place him. Kronos is super good. He's super good because he's also super safe with his ultimate. The only issue is he has been dinged with some nerfs. His scaling on his 1 and the damage increase on his basic attacks on his 2 have both been nerfed. And thus he is kind of probably going to fall out of favor compared to other magical assassins. I don't know though. I'm no magical ADC professor. but he's probably not going to see as much play as he has been. That's just a guess, though. He's still really strong, don't get me wrong. Just not as strong as before, which is a good thing. Next up is Kokolin. He's super strong. He's stronger than Bologna because his clear can't be cancelled. Another thing is, if he reaches level 2 and he's manages his rage wisely, he basically wins lane from there because upon reaching level 2, you can't fight him since he'll get Berserk form and then have 3 abilities along with his 2 that he used before Berserk form. So then he'll have 5 abilities in total. He will either bully out a lane, clear minions, and then bully out a lane. He doesn't require the mana buff. He can spam abilities to his ease because of rage. In late game team fights, he can unload his kit on his non-Berserk form, then go Berserk because he unloaded his kit, and then unload his kit again in Berserk form, and then unload his kit again in non-Berserk form if the team fight lasts that long, which it probably won't, but if it does, he can unload kits 3 times over minus his ult the last time, which is pretty insane when you think about it. Kokolin's really strong right now. Would not be surprised to see a couple of nerfs. Cupid, pretty strong hunter right now. Doesn't benefit off the Devo's crit build too much, but he can still use it. Most hunters can use it. There's some that can't really utilize it as well, but he can use it a pretty decent amount. His main attraction is that big AoE slow on his slow cripple on his ultimate, as well as the heart bomb stun. He's more of a CC hunter than anything else. Teamfight CC hunter. He has less attack speed than most other hunters. He doesn't have a stim. He's got a passive attack speed on his dash, I think. He does have heal. He's pretty safe. The issue is sprint does counter his ult pretty good. So it's pretty annoying to fight against sprint as Cupid. So we'll see how he fares from there. But I think he's going to be alright. A-okay. Daji. I think people are underrating Daji. I think she's pretty strong right now. Maybe I've just seen good players play her. Wink, wink. But I think she's pretty strong right now. She's got high burst. Her 3-1 combo is super easy to confirm. Her 2 can be used as further damage or as an escape. So she's more escapable than Najah. Her ultimate also can be used as an escape, but also has really nice CC attached to it, especially since Stone of Gaia has been nerfed pretty hard. So you can notice a trend here. But she's, in my opinion, pretty strong. She's like Fenrir and Najah combined without the crits and the high base damage. If that made any sense. Next god up, we have Erlong Shen. He's also going to join the rest of the A+ squadron. He's pretty strong right now. He can play multiple roles, solo, support, and jungle. Although jungle and support are a little bit more iffy, but solo he can play pretty nicely. In my opinion, not as strong as Bologna, but his mink and turtle form give him a lot of pressure. He's got 3 CC abilities. His dog, Celestial Dog, will proc other item effects, like Frostbound. I think he procs half of kin size or something. No, 1/3 of kin size. It also procs 1/3 of Death Toll, so he's pretty good amount of sustain there. He's kind of like a little bit worse version of Bologna. He's a basic attack Wukong. That's basically what he is. Fafnir. He's pretty strong right now due to the surge of magical ADCs. Due to the fact that most magical ADCs don't have a built-in steroid. He's really strong with them. He's got his CC is more single target though, but that steroid is really strong, especially for shredding objectives like towers and FG and such. In Draconic Corruption form, he can shred things with his 2 so easily because of his team. He just applies the 2 to his entire team and they'll just shred Gold Fury, they'll shred towers. He's really good in that sense, but as a Guardian CC wise, he's not the best. So that's why I'm not putting him in S tier. Hopefully that's understandable. Fenrir, he's also getting the Stone of Gaia is bad now, so he's good now treatment, because Fenrir's ult completely got countered by Stone of Gaia, which is really unfortunate for the guy. But now that's not a thing that can happen anymore. Fenrir also has high base damage, high CC. His early game is really strong. His late game is a little bit weaker, especially since he has to like cling to a target with his 3, making him relatively easy to hit by hunters especially. But other than that, he's got high base damage, high CC. He's a pretty good pick all around. Wouldn't be surprised to see more of him. Next guy we have on the list is Freya. Freya's really strong in my opinion. She's got a slow on her basics. Telekines might be a thing on her. Probably not though. But the attack speed items right now, along with the fact that Fafnir still exists, she's really strong there. She's got a banish. She's got a slow on all her basic attacks. She's got decent clear, not the best, but decent clear. Her sustain's really strong with her passive. Her ult is a get out of jail free card so that she can farm early game and not die as much, so that late game she can become a hyper carry. Her only issue is her early game, and her objective push is kind of bad. Okay, so now that we got Freya covered, next up is Ganesh. In my opinion, he's a pretty strong Guardian, especially in ranked, because he can give allies kills. Allies are people. Sometimes they can't be relied to give kills or get kills, so you being able to confirm kills is pretty useful. Not only that, his 1 is basically you win lane clear most of the time because of the fact that it increases your ADC's damage. Your 2 doesn't get affected by diminishing returns. It's a 1.8 second silence that gives protections for a bit, but the 1.8 second silence is super important, super useful in team fights. Really disrupts a lot. His 3 is really useful for single target lockdown. It's like Kepri's dash, single target. However, he does have his silence for team fights, as well as his ultimate for team fights, which is really underrated in my opinion. A lot of damage per tick, and the ticks tick really quickly. Also, the fact that it slows and reduces protection, so it's really good. All on a 75-second cooldown. It's like psychiatric, or I don't know how to describe it. It's like Odin Cage in your mind. Like you can leave it, but you don't want to, because in your mind you know it's going to do a lot of damage, so you're going to stay in it, but it also does a lot of damage if you leave or if you stay. So it's like mental Odin Cage games, whatever. But Ganesh is good, that's my point. Geb is also pretty strong. He counters crits with his passive. He's really strong in that sense. Crits plus the fact that he can shield so that people survive longer against crits. I know I'm talking about crits a lot, but just in general, survival is super important with Geb. I might move him down a bit for 2 reasons. One, his early game is not the best early game, and the fact that his clear is not the best. His ult's good, but the thing with his ult is you're not going to set up the cool plays unless you have comms, which is more likely now, but you're not going to set up the cool plays without comms, is what I'm trying to say, without a 5-man, without some communication. But he's still really strong. I'm debating on if I should put him in S or S-. I think I'll put him in S tier because of the fact that he counters crits so hard with his passive, but we shall see in the future. Guan Yu. His ult's good. His 1's good. Other than that, the rest of his kit's kind of meh. Like really meh. So, there's no reason to really play Guan Yu. Only physical healer, I guess, other than like Cupid and stuff, but only physical warrior that can heal other allies. Next is Hades. He's Anubis. He's battle Anubis. So, hear me out. He's got more protections. He's tankier. He's got a little bit less sustain, but all of his abilities are closer ranged. But he, in my opinion, is better than Anubis because he does have the leap. Even though his ult roots him in place, it's a CC ult that can set up a lot of other things. He can build tanky. He can build tankier than Anubis can. And thus, he can play solo lane as well. And if he plays solo lane, he's going to build tankier. He's got more options then. And he can set up kills for other laners. He's a pretty good god. He's not the best, though. He definitely, having to use your leap into wave is pretty annoying. Especially if you get caught out afterwards. But he's a decent god. Habwa. He's got 3 quote-unquote ultimates. However, the thing with Habwa is he's a late game mage. And he doesn't have an escape like all of these other mages down here, dude. He doesn't have an escape. His knockup is pretty good. Since Stone of Gaia doesn't exist. His 1 is really good because you can spam it. His carpet's really good because it gives you slow immunity and slows enemies. His ult is good for damage as well as an escape. It's just the fact that he doesn't have a escape outside of his ultimate that makes him really easy pickings. But other than that, he's a really good character. he's just held back by one or so flaws. Hell. I think she's S minus. I think any higher is overrating her. There's a lot of anti-heal in this game. You can notice from stuff like Chang'e, from stuff like Kukulin, Sobek, Bacchus. What other gods have built-in anti-heal? I'm trying to think. I don't think there's any others. Maybe there is, and I'm just blanking. But those gods, at least, I know have anti-heal, and those hurt hell a lot. Because her main draw for playing support is the fact that she can heal a lot. But in ranked, it's a lot harder to compose a team comp with a lot of anti-heal gods. Serket, Osiris, I forgot. Those guys have 100%. And Odin. Yeah. But there's a lot of anti-heal going around. And Hal gets counted by that, but it's hard to build comps with those gods, all of them. So that's why she's doing decent. Also, the heal is also a team-wide movement speed and protection buff if you get Lotus Crown, which you probably will. Genji's Guard is also really good on her, and Genji's Guard is a really good item right now. CDR is a really good stat on her, and CDR on Genji's Guard exists, so that's why she's good. But I think she's very overrated, specifically because of Odin. Odin is a really meta god right now, and she's probably gonna drop in popularity soon. Next up is Hercules. In my opinion, he's just meh version of Tyr. I know I sound like the Emoji Movie, but it's just kind of the case with Hercules. He's got a better heal than Tyr. I'll give him that. But his combo is a little bit more predictable. His ult is a little bit bad late game. Early game it can get kills. Late game it doesn't do much. It's just damage. Warriors want to have kind of CC ults. Think of Kukulin, think of Bellona, think of Amaterasu. Think of Erlang. You can also get control ultimates like Odin ult. You can get dive ultimates like Tyr, like Osiris, like Raven, You want ultimates that are useful for something. Hercules doesn't have that. Next god here we have is Hu Yi. As long as you hit those bounces, you are gonna do well with Hu Yi. He's really strong. You can attach a CC on any of your other abilities if you mark the target. Your ult slows more, your 3 knocks up, and your 1 stuns. That's really useful. His ult is also a giant AoE slow. So there's that too. Really controls team fights, really good for zoning. He's just all in all a good god. Next up is Hunbat. Speaking of giant AoE ults that have a lot of control, Hunbat is here. His ult is the main defining feature of him. His ult fears all enemies in a giant area, which is super useful in team fights. It sets up things easily. It burns beads really nicely. Sure, it's on a 100-second cooldown, but him and Ares work really well together because of the beads burn comp. The rest of his kit's kind of mediocre, to be honest, but he does scale off crit, and crit is pretty good right now. So Isis, she's got lane clear, she's got early game, she's got objective control, but she's not the best because other mages can do certain things better than her, and that's about it. She's pretty strong though. I think people are sleeping on Isis, not using her as much as people should because she is pretty strong, but they're just better mages than her, I think. Izanami, I think it's actually DPS wise she does worse with this build than any other hunter, just because of the way her basics work. I don't know, don't quote me on that, but I think that's how it is. Also, her basics are super awkward anyway, which is why she's in this tier. Her slow is nice, her 1 is really strong, her invis is pretty decent, I guess. Her ultimate's kind of iffy because it takes time to wind up, but if you do get it, it's strong. It's like Kernanos wind up ult, except Kernanos is bigger, so there's that. But she's a decent god. No reason to pick her over something like Apollo or like Hu Yi or Rom, but she's decent. She's got her niche plays. If you're good at her, play her, why not? Next god on the list is Giannis, and he's got things up his sleeve, specifically mobility and a lot of damage on one ability. His 2 does a lot of damage. If you can hit the ult, it also does a lot of damage, but that's usually the ult's usually used to get in or get out of a fight, and that's really useful. Giannis is one of the best engagers / disengagers in the game because of his ultimate. He's got high mobility and decently high damage, decently high utility, and that's why he's good. Jingwei, she's decent. She's like with Hercules, she's a meh version of another god. She's In my opinion, worst version of Apollo. Her passive and his passive are kind of different. Those are the most different things about her. Her one is lane clear. Apollo's one is lane clear, but her one's also CC. So that's a thing, but her CC is small and delayed. Apollo's 2 is CC, and it's quick, not delayed, lasts for 2 seconds, and is larger than hers. Their dashes are pretty similar. Both give movement speed, except Apollo's has CC attached to it and doesn't require you to be knocked up to be fully useful. And Apollo's ult is just better because it's not only global presence, it does a little bit less damage probably, I think. But its global presence, I think that's the best thing. Global presence is just better than Jingwei's because of that, and thus safer. So Jingwei can work. She's still really good. Just not as good as gods like Apollo. Kali, the god that you slap on a hasten katana and kin size, and she will do the rest. Kali is really strong, especially since games are going on longer. I don't think there's much more to be said about her. She's a late game hyper carry. Scales well off of attack speed. She's got an ult that basically makes her immune to damage. Or not immune to damage, immune to dying. Her early game is not the worst. With her 2. Her 2 does a lot of damage with Bluestone. So there's that. Next god is Khepri. Khepri is pretty strong right now. However, the issue with Khepri is his 1. If you grab an opponent, they're going to be basic attacking you if they're a hunter. If they're a hunter and they're basic attacking you, they're probably going to have crit. If they have crit, they're going to be chunking you because you are one of the squishier guardians, which is really unfortunate because you have the largest hitbox in the game. But anyway, you are a squishy guardian that is getting crit, which really hurts. But Khepri's 2 reduces damage for all allies so that they can take the crits for you. Specifically your warrior, because it's probably going to be Osiris or Bellona or Coquelin, something of the sort, something tanky. And your ultimate, which is the most important thing about you, it's a free reset. It's a reset to anything that happened. Excuse me. But that ultimate is the reason Khepri stays anywhere in this tier. Especially since they just buffed it. They made the delay not exist, so Khepri can use his ult instantly, basically. And that's really useful, especially for getting that 0.001 second revive off, and that'll just cause a lot of frustration and a lot of mental warfare will go into there. Psychological warfare. Tilting enemies and such. But next god we have is Kukul Khan. I think people sleep on this god. I'm going to put him in A tier. Now, hear me out on this. Kukul Khan, like other mages, doesn't have mobility, but his 2 is pretty decent on that. But he also has a lot of self-peel in his 1, and his ultimate. Unlike Cabua, he doesn't put himself out of position when ulting. But also, unlike Cabua, his ult has CC. And if, say, something like a Kali or something like a Mercury is on his ass, Kukul Khan can just ult to get rid of him. It has a knockup. People know this. It has knockup. It does a lot of damage. So if he does hit you with the ultimate, because it goes slightly behind him, if he does hit you, he can maybe then turn around and use his 1 and 3, and you might be dead. Cuckoo, in my opinion, is safer than Habwa, but that's just my opinion. He also scales better off of Magus and Telkines than Habwa, so he's got more item options. He can also build Gem of Isolation better. He's got more options than Habwa does, and that's why I rank him higher than Habwa. Next god is Kumbha Karn. He is decent. He's got CC. It just takes a long time to get through the windups. That's why he's not the best. His dash also is kind of iffy because his dash is his main source of clear, and having your main source of clear attached to your mobility ability that's on a decently long cooldown is kind of an issue, especially for a guardian. But his passive is really strong. Next god is Kuzenbo. He performs better as a solo laner than support, but even then he's mad because he disrupts in a strange way. Like Kunbats, he kind of pushes enemies away from the center of him, with his ultimate at least, but that really doesn't help because unlike Kunbats, it's more sporadic, it's more randomized, and thus it's harder to set up abilities on top of that. He's really decent at peeling for his team, but other than that, he's garbage. I just really dislike the god. I just want to put him in D tier for the memes, but I'll try to keep it as unbiased as possible and put him in A- tier, even though it's a tier list based on opinions. So next is Loki. Split pushing is pretty hard to do with these new towers. Towers are thick now, and by the time you kill a tower, your team might have already been wiped because there's a 4v5 the whole time, and then now the enemy team is doing Fire Giant, got tier 2 mid tower, got Phoenix, and now is rushing Titan, and you're Loki, who can't do much other than kill one squishy with your ultimate. So there's that. Next up is Medusa. Like Cupid, she's a CC based hunter more or less, but unlike Cupid, she's got more options. She's a lot more versatile. She's one of the most versatile hunters. She can build ability, she can build attack speed, she can build crit, she can build lifesteal, although she's not the best with like crit lifesteal, but she's still really strong with it. Her ult's pretty good on that sense. Her 3 has a small root attached and anti-heal. I think that is overlooked, but her 3 does have anti-heal on it. I even overlooked it just before. She's got high poke. Her 1 does a lot of damage early game. She's got a lot of pressure early game. I'm not going to say she falls off late game. She's just interesting late game. Her passive allows you to juke more basics because Hasten Katana is now only for melee, so there's that. Next up is Mercury. Mercury is pretty strong right now. His main source of damage was crits, and crits are buffed, so buffed crits means buffed Mercury, basically. I don't know what else there is to say other than that. Crits are buffed, Mercury's buffed, Mercury scales off crits, and crits are buffed. That's the moral of the story. But seriously, on a serious note, his 2 gives him slow immunity, his ult gives him a somewhat global presence. It has to be a line, though. He also has a good amount of CC in his ult and his 3. His 1 does damage late game, early game not so much. His basics just chunk late game. His steroid is really strong, so there's that. Next comes the ability version of Mercury, Naja. Naja also can crit a lot and scales really well off crit, but Naja is more ability focused, while Mercury is probably more basic attack oriented. So they're slightly different, but they're relatively similar. Both their dashes and ults both have CC attached to them. Naja is more all in and has a heal, so he can be built tankier than Mercury and still do a lot of damage because of the way Naja works. He scales off crit. His ultimate's really strong if you can get it through. No beads. If there are beads that is used against you, I think that was grammar. If the beads are used against you, then that kind of sucks. But Najal, if you can take them out of the fight for a bit, that's pretty good for your team. Also, you get immunity frames from both your 3 and the ending of your ultimate. That's also really useful. Some players don't know that and thus get punished because of it. Next is Neith. She's decent. The thing with Neith is she's not basic attack based, and basic attack based hunters are being favored in the meta right now purely because of the crit devos. Not only that, she's really ability focused, one of the few hunters that doesn't make too much use out of crit devos, even though devos does give a good amount of power. But she is super safe. She's got her root, she's got her global ult that stuns, so if you want to play Neith, you can be my guest. Next god is Nemesis. She's really strong. The fact that crit Nemesis exists, I think attack speed Nemesis is still stronger, but crit Nemesis exists. But really, it's more about the ultimate, the fact that it reduces protection so much, the fact that her basic attacks also steal power, and the fact that her 2 slows for so much, and got buffed base damage wise. So, all in all, pretty good god right there. Nike, on the other hand, is a meh god. A lot of times I'm going to be using the word meh because she's not that bad, but she's just kind of there. Like, she's pretty balanced. Her ultimate's good. Her passive's good. Her 1, 2, and 3 could be better. Her 3 is pretty decent, actually. It gives knockups, and knockups are pretty useful now. But her 1 is okay ability. It can be interrupted, and it's really slow to get all 3 ticks off. That's the issue with her, so... But other than that, her ultimate's good. She's more of a bullet sponge that has her passive help her team more than anything else. Next comes Nox. Nox is pretty good right now. Her ultimate is on a low cooldown. And because of her ultimate being on a low cooldown, she can initiate a fight with that. And thus, the entire enemy team is doing less damage and is also taking damage over time. thus negating some effects of healing and stuff. Not only that, but her ultimate might be on a short enough cooldown where she can use it at the end of a fight to confirm kills and whatnot, because it does have a long range. Not only that, she's pretty safe with Shadow Step. If she can land her 1-2 combo, she's really good. Otherwise, she's mediocre at best. Mediocre at best. You guys thought I was going to say meh. Haha, I was going to say mediocre. Next up is Nuwa. You see, I'm tempted to put her in A+ because of the Clay Soldier buff, but I'm going to keep her in A to see where she goes. Nuwa is interesting because she used to rely on AI minions, minion AI, which is kind of really good, right? But now she can target her minions, which is super helpful, especially for confirming that stun. Her passive gives her free... Actually, I might put her in A+, because her passive gives her a free root after 5 basics. She gets a stun off of her Clay Soldiers. Her passive can set up Clay Soldiers really easily. Her Fog is somewhat decent escape. It's not the best, but it's somewhat decent. Her ultimate makes her really safe, because not only does it give her vision of every enemy, it also puts her in the sky and allows her to land in a certain location. It also does damage to every enemy, so there's that. So she's all around pretty good. She's all around pretty good. In my opinion, underrated. Odin, on the other hand, is not underrated. In fact, he is just as strong as he is said to be, because Odin has 100% anti-heal on his, 75-second cage, that you need a specific relic that's not the best right now to counter. Phantom is the relic I'm talking about. His early game is absurd with Bird Bomb combo. His late game, although he becomes somewhat of an ult bot, that ultimate at least is really good, better than Balka's, so he's just really strong right now for that reason. And he's also a warrior that's played in the jungle, so what more can you ask? Osiris is also pretty strong. He's got 100% anti-heal on his ult, however, it is a lot harder to hit his ult. He's more of a dive backline harasser, with the fact that he can slow enemies with his 1. He can slow enemies and give him a speed boost if they are affected by the 1 with his 2. He can also reduce damage and stun enemies after a short duration with his 3. He's just all around a backline harasser like Robin. However, he's more of a solo lane backline harasser, whereas Robin is more of a jungle backline harasser. Poseidon, as long as Gem of Isolation exists, Poseidon exists. Poseidon with Gem of Isolation, Spear Magus, and Telkine sounds really scary to me. I don't know about you guys, but he sounds pretty scary to me. He's going to have a lot of burst, he's going to have a lot of shred, and that's going to be pretty useful for allies and himself, because he's more of a utility mage than a burst mage, although his burst is super strong with Kraken +1 combo, that's a pretty good combo. Ra, he's a relatively simple god. He's got some lines. Of course, these lines need to be hit in order for him to be fully effective. If they are hit, it's pretty devastating to fight against him, because not only do those two abilities do a lot of damage, his ult and his 1, but they're both on short cooldowns, and he also has a heal. His passive makes him relatively slippery because it gives him movement speed, and his 2 also makes him relatively slippery because not only does it blind foes who look at him, it also slows them. Next god is Raijin. Raijin could be good if his leap was decent. His passive, if utilized properly, is really good. His 1 and his 2 and his ultimate aren't that bad of abilities. It's just that his 3 excuse me. His 3 is just kind of bad because you can interrupt it. You're a sitting duck while casting your 3, and that really hurts you as a player and as the god Raijin. So if they fix that, Raijin could see a rise in A, and if they buff damage numbers, he might even go to A+. But until then, he's going to stay in A-. Next god is Rom, which is really strong right now. He's in S- in my opinion, because of the fact that he was one of the OG Crit Devo users. He loves the Crit Devo. He's got the global presence with his ultimate. He's got the roll, making him super safe. He can roll backwards while aggressing. His lane clear is pretty decent with his 1. He's got a steroid. He's just pretty good all around, except really good because of the Crit Devos. Next god on the list is Ratatoskr. He's pretty decent. He's got a knock up on his ultimate. Stone of Guy doesn't counter that anymore. He's got a stun on his 3, I think. Yeah. He's got a slow on his dash. He's got a shred. He's pretty decent. Just his abilities take some time to confirm, especially his 2, if you want to get the maximum DPS. And you have to be really up close and personal if you want to get his 1 and 3 confirmed. And his ult also did get nerfed with a reduced radius. Next god is Robin. Robin is pretty strong right now. As a jungler, he's really strong. He can dive the backline like Osiris. Unlike Osiris, though, he gets 40% damage reduction right off the gate, whereas Osiris gets 16% damage mitigation, which is a little bit... It's different. Those numbers are different. But 40% damage reduction allows Robin to dive towers as soon as he hits level 5. Not only that, but he has a heal on his 3, although single target, and a slow on his 1, although somewhat single target. His 2 also gives him damage immunity and CC immunity, unlike a 16-second cooldown. So he's super useful. Late game, he transitions into more of a frontline harass. That frontliner that can harass the backline as he chooses. So he's pretty interesting on that front. Next god up is Scylla. As long as Scylla has her crush and her I'm a monster, she's going to be strong. Her damage is just absurd to not think it's not strong. She's just going to be pretty decent, and maybe sometimes she will be top tier. Maybe sometimes she'll be pretty decent, because her damage is absurd. She can't be any lower than pretty decent. Not only that, she has an escape, so she already classes anyone in B tier. Next god is Serket. She counters healing, a lot of healing. Her ultimate counters some gods, specifically warriors. Most warriors get countered by it because they are tankier with more protections, and true damage doesn't care about protections. It just does true damage, the health damage as shown. And that makes Serket really strong, plus the fact that she scales off a crit. So all around, just a strong goddess in general. Next is Scotty. Scotty took a pretty big hit this patch. Her ice rink now starts at 20 or something like that and goes only to 40%. And I think the ice rink slow also got nerfed. Don't quote me on that though. But her ice rink, which gave her so much like control over the battlefield, is now a lot weaker, which is a good thing because Scotty was pretty dominant beforehand. But now she's a little bit less dominant. In my prediction of the future, she's not going to be as dominant as she was before. She can easily CC and escape issues with her ice rink, but now that's going to be a little bit harder. Next up is Sobek. I think I put him in the wrong tier, actually. Yeah, he's pretty good right now. He's pretty good. He's got his pluck, no longer counted by Stone of Gaia. His 2, no longer counted by Stone of Gaia. His 3 gives anti-heal, but also heals himself, so he's got decent sustain. His ult is a slow that also regens mana. Pretty good god to me. Don't see an issue with him. Next up is Sol. She is more of the ability version, so you can look at it as a spectrum. Freya's the more basic attack version. Kronos is a mix between the two, and then Sol is the more ability version, because she scales more off of ability damage than basic attack damage compared to the other two. Her 2 does insane amounts of damage. Her 1 gives her some sustain as well as boosts her passive a lot, which allows her to shred towers. Shredding towers is her main goal. Shredding towers and objectives with her ultimate. She's really good at that, and because of that, she's picked up a lot. And not only that, but her 3 makes her super safe to play. So yeah, there's that. Wukong, a god that gets countered by Serket ult with his ult. The thing with Wukong, though, is he's super safe. His ult makes him super safe. His bird makes him super safe. He's also got safe poke. He can bull form you out. He can bull form poke you. No. He's got safe CC, safe poke, other than his 2, which you have to be relatively close, but even that's pretty safe. He also uses Glad Shield exceptionally well, and that's why he's not higher, is because of the Glad Shield nerfs and nothing more. Wukong is still really strong. Do not sleep on my boy. Next up is Susano. He's seeing some buffs this patch. I think he's going to rise a bit, especially since Wind Siphon or whatever it's called is now on a 2-second shorter cooldown, which means you can use that ability more often. And not only that, you can't counter with Stone of Gaia. All of Susano's CC abilities were Stone of Gaia countered, and now that's not a thing. So Susano's probably going to come back in the meta, although he's probably never going to be as good as Serket as long as crit's a thing. Next up, Sylvanas in A tier. Lack of mobility. He's one of the few guardians, actually one of the only guardians, that mobility really matters on. He's really fat, like his hitbox is really big, and he also can get caught out super easily. His ultimate can peel for him a bit, his 1 can peel for him a bit, but other than that, he's toast if he gets caught out. That it's just really hurting him, dude. But he does have heals, he does have roots. If you can land the pull, it's really good. His ultimate's one of the better Guardian ultimates because it's a knock-up, and Stone of Gaia doesn't exist, like I said. So yeah, Sylvanas is good, just not great. Many gods counter him. Terra being a god that kind of does what he does, but better. Terra's got the global ultimate that's a med, basically a med, and sprint combined. A little bit lesser versions of each, but basically both of those combined. Her dash is really useful, especially with her 3, because that's kind of how she gets this CC the size of the moon. Like Sylvanas has his root, it's pretty small. Terra's root is like double the radius or something. It's something ridiculous because Terra's root is really big, and it's super easy to confirm. It's also super safe because you can dash into your monolith and then dash away again. Not only that, but the monolith heals and gives you your passive so you cannot be knocked up. Your 2's a little bit harder to confirm, but it's a stun, and that's really good. So, all around, just a really good god. If you can coordinate your ultimate well, you'll probably always win a team fight. Thanatos. He's decent. The thing with Thanatos is he's like reverse Akwang. He's early game. He has to go all in with his ultimate versus Akwang can go all in on ground and then use his ultimate to leave. Thanatos does have that nice execute to counter gods, specifically like Khepri and Geb, and Shell. He counters Shell pretty nicely with that execute. However, Shell also counters his Scythe, so he doesn't have as much damage that way. All in all, he's kind of an even god. If he starts rolling, he's gonna stay rolling. If he doesn't, he's just gonna kind of be there. And that's why I'm only gonna put him in A tier, no higher. Morgan, on the other hand, I will put a little bit higher because if you have skills with a lot of gods in this game, and you play Morgan, you will do really well because Morgan is super versatile. Versatility is a word that I don't use often, but only certain gods get that treatment. But she's super versatile because she can literally be any god in that match. Which is really useful. You can be a guardian to help out your team's CC or whatever. You can be a mage to help out your team's AoE burst. You can be an assassin to single out a target. You can be a hunter to blow up structures and whatnot. She's really good at that, and that makes her really good. Not only that, but in her non-transform form, her 1 does a lot of damage, her 2 does a lot of damage, her decoy is really useful. Her passive's pretty nice for early game poke. She works really well off poly and stuff. She's a really good jungler, a decent mid laner. What more is there to be said about Morgan? Thor! He is, in my opinion, better than Ratatoskr because of the way that his spin to win, I think, cannot be... His spin to win, I know, cannot be knocked up. I think Rats can be. You quote me tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that's how that works. Also, Thor's wall is a lot easier to confirm. Thor's wall double tap is safer poke than Ratatoskr's 3. It also does more damage, a lot more damage early game, and they're both early game gods. Both have global ultimates, except Thor's... Actually, Ratatoskr's ultimate is still a little bit better, but Thor's is more unpredictable, because you don't always see it coming, especially in ranked, when you don't have full comms all the time. So Thor's better Rat, in my opinion. These two fluctuate. Either Rat's better Thor, Thor's better Rat, depends on what's happening in the meta. It used to be Thor was worse Rat at one point, but now it's the other way around. Next god is Thoth. He's pretty good right now. He's got insane poke, decent dash. For whatever reason, dash also has a stun. His ultimate is pretty damn strong. If you charge it up and hit it, that is. If you miss it, well, it's not that strong. But he can do a lot of work from really far away, which makes him super safe, which is why he's picked up at all. And he's pretty strong right now, so... yeah. When it comes to tier, like I said, he's better Hercules. He's got a knock-up, so Stone of Gaia, now that that's not a thing, he's good. He's got a heal like Hercules, although not as good, but he does get protection and power from his passive. His ult also allows him to dive the back line, and not only that, escape situations if they become too hairy. Next god is Ullr. Probably, in my opinion, the god that... he's going to be an A+. but probably the god that benefits from Devos and crit the least. I think that Uller is very ability focused. You rarely see basic attack Uller. You really want to get that power on him because his abilities do so much damage. But even if you're not going the crit Devos build, you can still go the power build, and it still works wonders on Uller. Just the fear you instill in your enemies by switching to your axe form is a lot. You get a lot of pressure just from switching. You don't even have to use your axe. Just switch to that form, and your opponents get a little afraid. So he's all in all. If you land that axe and you do the combo perfectly, it's just scary to deal with. But you know, it's got a decently high skill cap. Next up is Vomit. He's got a better ultimate than Hercules. He's kind of got the Nike ultimate where he just wants to soak up a lot of damage. However, unlike Nike ultimate, he's also got like the basic attack presence, so he can do a lot of damage while in his ultimate. The thing about it is that his ultimate gets countered by anti-heal, and there's a lot of that right now. His other abilities are decent. Umbrella Raying, if you hit it, you can get that nice slow, and it's also an attack speed slow, so that's pretty useful against hunters. His 2 late game is just a damaging ability, not too useful, but it is damage. That's really easy to hit. His 1's a knock up, which is really good. It's a really good dash. He's really safe, good lane clear, nice, pretty bully. He doesn't fall off per se, but he doesn't ever have his best point in the game is mid game. So like right when team fights are about to start, but not everyone has finished items, which is basically when he's the best. Next god up is Vulcan. He's pretty strong right now in my opinion. He's definitely got a hit or miss ult. If you hit it, it does damage. If you miss it, it doesn't. And that's pretty crucial to hit during team fights. His 1 makes him pretty safe. His meatball makes him even safer, and his turret makes him safe cubed. He's got a lot of peel with his 3. His 1 is really safe. It's like a backwards ROM roll, but it also does damage and marks you for the turret. The turret is not the best ability, but it allows you to farm in multiple areas. A smart Vulcan might place a turret in a camp while he's going to do mid lane. So the camp and the jungler will do things, but that's more of SPL level. But Vulcan himself, he's pretty strong. The combo does a lot of damage late game. He is, of course, a late game mage, which is why he isn't any higher. If he was higher, it would be because his early game is also really strong. Next up is Shiba Lanke. I would rather have a Shiba Lanke over Artemis because he has a dash that gives him CC immunity, which is really strong. Plus the fact that his ultimate's global, although may not be as good as Artemis ult, it's still pretty nice global disruption. And even though it's countered relatively easy just by pressing B on the last tick, it's still a pretty strong ultimate for disrupting vision. He has a lot of basic attack damage. I think he scales pretty decently off the crit Devos build. I'm not sure though. I do play some Shiba Lanke, but I don't play him often enough to know. But he's pretty strong in that sense. I think he's underrated right now, and we'll see how he goes. He's definitely really late game, which is why he's not played a lot. Next up is Xing Chen. Xing Chen's pretty strong. His 1 reduces basic attack damage. I think that applies to crits too, which is super useful. He's a great solo laner. His ultimate's no longer countered. His 2 is no longer countered by Stone of Gaia. So 2 items, two abilities that are no longer counted. He's got 2 leaps, not 1 but 2. They give protection, so he's all around pretty good. He's probably better in solo than in support, but he can play support and do decently. Next up is Ymir. He doesn't have mobility, but he does have the 2-second freeze. The thing with Ymir is he's a very damaging guardian. Like, he's got base 1110, or no, base 1100 on his ultimate or something like that, plus like 100% scaling. So he's one of the most damaging ultimates in the game. But it's Ymir, and you're probably never going to get that amount of damage off ever. But if you do, you win team fights. The thing about Ymir is, although he doesn't have any like movement abilities, he does have a lot of pressure in lane due to the freeze and the threat that it's always there. Same with Athena, except Athena does have that presence globally. Zeus. The lack of mobility hurts him. He is, although, better than these other mages purely because you can build tankier and still do a lot of work. The thing with Zeus also is he performs a lot better than these other mages because his early game is really decent. And he also has the pressure with Detonate. His ultimate's also pretty useful when it comes to just big AoE ultimates. And yeah, there's that. Other than that, he's pretty easy to pick on if you're a good jungler. You're probably going to pick on Zeus, but if Zeus gets rolling, it's going to be hard to stop him. Next god and final god is Zhang Kui. He is, in my opinion, people are underestimating him, but I think I'll keep him in A tier. He's probably going to be a solo laner more than a mid laner, but he can mid lane. Especially in ranked. Actually, since this is ranked, I'm going to put him up because he is tankier than Zeus, and thus his mobility, or lack thereof, is a little bit more excusable. His ultimate's one of the better teamfight ultimates, although it is hard countered by Shell. He still does a lot of work and has a lot of burst outside of his ultimate with his 1-2 combo. He also has a decent amount of healing and a decent amount of control if he does get Gem of Isolation. So I think that right there is the tier list. Tell me what you guys think of it. Tell me if you disagree. Tell me how much you disagree. Tell me if this was a good video. I really enjoyed making it, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching. And see you guys next time.